Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times together. Today I have one of those videos that you guys really enjoy every month because we're here to discuss some horror book releases for the month of October.
It's coffee time.
October is spooky month, it's Halloween month, you know, cold starts to come and it's just nice to just get cozy with a book and a cup of coffee or tea, beverage of your choice. And there is many, releases when it comes to horror and mystery thrillers for the month of October. There's also many short horror story compilations which are perfect if you want to read just a couple of ghost stories for Halloween night. So I have put together a list for you of 32 releases. Probably there's even more, so we have so many to talk about today that I'm gonna have to kind of fly through them a little bit, but without further ado, let's go and check them out. Fit for Consumption by Steve Berman. This is adult horror and it's a compilation of short horror stories in which quite literally you are what you eat. These are stories of gay men that are, going through some weird appetite phases as they grow older, as they face new fears in life, and it just sounds so interesting to me. The cover is a little bit off-putting because I don't know how intense it's gonna get, but I did read that there's something in the collection about cannibalism. Mouthful of Ashes by Brianna Morgan, adult horror. This one is one that I'm really excited about because we have here vampires. So we have our main character Callie, and she is struggling to move on after the death of her sister, so she decides to move into a new small town, kind of looking for a new fresh start, and she's there with her brother when they encounter a clan of what it seems to be vampires. Now, she kind of refuses the idea of vampires ever really existing until the brothers ingest vampire blood and their bodies start to change. Moonlight Harvest by Lee Willow, another adult horror, and this one is supposed to be an erotic novel that explores the myth of vampires. So another one that sounds really interesting. I'm a sucker for everything that has to do with vampires. So in this case we have yet again another woman that is new in a town and she starts to notice that strange things happen in this place, and apparently there is some ancient evil in the basement of the town's church. So it sounds a little bit classic-y, but I'm excited to see what kind of twist they give to the story. Bones Will Roll by Joshua Reynolds, and this is the first novel inspired by the games Zombicide. I think these are all board games that you can play. I have never played them, but this sounds like a lot of fun, and it's going to be, of course, your typical story in which there is a zombie apocalypse and the humans have had to adapt since. Cockle by Rachel Harrison. This is adult horror fantasy, and we follow the character of Annie, and she has been terribly dumped by her boyfriend, and she is again looking for a fresh start. A lot of our characters that end up in a horror story are just people looking for a fresh start, and they cannot even get that. Like, frustrating. Anyways, Annie moves to this new place, she starts a new job, and she thinks, that's what she needed to move on. And then she meets Sophie. She is beautiful, she seems to be perfect, and they developed a friendship until she realizes that people in town seem to actually be afraid of Sophie. So what is wrong with her? I mean, granted, she looks ageless and she lives in this old creepy mansion, so what is actually happening with Sophie? The Gold Persimmon by Lindsay Merbon, and this is supposed to be horror queer fiction, and when I read the premise of this one, it reminded me of the Sundown Motel, because we follow Clyde that works at a hotel desk, at the check-in desks, and apparently this hotel is hiding a lot of dark secrets. And in a parallel reality, the city is covered by fog, and we have here a non-binary character that finds herself trapped in a sex hotel. So it sounds intriguing, interesting. I love this kind of parallel universe and kind of like whole hotels with creepy secrets, so I really want to check this one out. Our next book is a horror compilation of some ghostly stories for your perfect cozy winter, well, kind of fall spooky night. And this one, let me read it for you because it's kind of long. It is The Hunting Season, 8 ghostly tales for long Winter Nights, and this is adult short horror stories. These are supposed to be like really creepy, atmospheric, eerie, more classic horror stories like the ones that people used to tell around the fire for Halloween or for winter nights, you know, all of those old classics like The Turn of the Screw. So if you like this kind of more classic ghostly stories, you might want to check this one out. The Hungry Earth by Nicholas Kaufman. This is adult horror, and here we are in New York, a city where everybody knows each other, a city in which everything looks perfect and nice, and there is basically such low crime rate that Laura, who is a medical examiner at the police, doesn't really have much work, so she mostly attends her own medical practice. That is until a local high school student appears dead, and they call her to perform an examination on the body, and she realizes that it is a really weird organism attached to the body, and that brings her to a horrible discovery, that is, a virus is spreading throughout the city. The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook, and this is adult gothic horror fantasy, and it sounds really good. So basically a mother moves with her 3 daughters into a lighthouse to restore something in the lighthouse, and they start their new life there, and nobody tells her that there is a cave attached to the lighthouse that was supposed to be a prison for witches back in the day. Now her and her 3 daughters are living there until 2 of the daughters mysteriously disappear. 22 years later, one of the daughters comes back, but she's still 7 years old, the age she had when she disappeared. Reprised by James Han Matson. This is a horror mystery thriller, and in this one I thought it was really interesting because we are in the 90s and we follow a group of people that are joining kind of like a horror escape room thing kind of situation. There's actors there, there is puzzle things they have to solve, and there is a safe word for when they want to stop the game, and that is Reprised. That is the safe word, and everything seems to be going okay until somebody breaks into that house and one of them is killed. Now I've read that this is supposed to be kind of also a commentary on like our social behavior and how we love to see people that are put in situations like this, how we crave see other people in fear and things like that. So I thought it was a really interesting take, and I am really like excited about anything that has to do with escape rooms or solving puzzles or try to figure out ways out of some place. So this is definitely one that I'm gonna put on my wish list. The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling, and this is horror gothic, and please take a look at this cover. It is stunning. And in this story we follow Jane. She has decided that she doesn't want her life to be really complicated. She wants to have time for her own things, so she decides she wants to marry rich basically, and she looks for a doctor that can basically provide for her and give her the future that she wants. However, after the wedding that night she ends up seeing him behaving really weird. He seems confused, he seems like he's seeing things, and the next morning he seems fine again. So what is actually happening with her husband? The Forest by Lisa Quigley, and this is her first full-on horror novel. She did write Camp Neverland. It was part of the series Rewind or Die, and I did read that one and enjoyed it, and now she comes with a full-on novel that sounds really interesting. We are in a really small town, and every year they have specific rituals and festivals that they do, and this year our main character is responsible to organize and kind of host the events, and that is when she realizes that this festival is a little bit darker than she expected. Apparently the forest requires a very specific sacrifice. The Ghosts of Who You Were by Christopher Golden, and this is a horror, adult horror, and these are short horror stories, and one of them has to do with a door that is found inside of an elevator. Another story is about a prison of stolen children. Like, they all sound so good, and definitely another short horror story compilation worth checking out. Then we have Pearl by Josh Malerman, and this is adult horror. Of course, really excited about this one because every book that I have read by Josh Malerman I have, you know, really enjoyed. This one sounds a little bit creepy. It takes place in a farm, so I'm a little bit concerned about the possible animal cruelty that we're gonna get to see in this book, so I'll have to see about that. The synopsis is not really specific, so I'm not really sure about the triggers. But apparently when you are in this farm, you hear some voices that are making you do things, like kill things and all of those stuffs. So I'm not really sure if I'm gonna enjoy it as much as I hope to, but we shall see when the book comes out. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, another adult horror, and in this case we have a couple that decide to buy the world's most like fancy expensive speaker, and apparently after they do, weird things start to happen in the house, weird noises, weird songs, and there's packages showing up at their door of things that they didn't order. But the couple is having fun with it until Vera appears dead and Tiago has to move on without her. And this is supposed to be a novel about grief and about also the effects of technology in the current world. And I'm really intrigued about this one because I love when books bring technology and combine it with horror, and also, you know, how addicted probably we are to technology, all of these things. And it's also a book that explores Tiago and his grief and his loneliness, and I also love to see that in horror. Brookfield by Gordon B. White. This is another horror adult book, and this one might be a little bit too close to home for a lot of people, since this is a full-on book about the events of last year. So we do follow a pandemic, and we follow a guy that is trying to flee this virus with his ex-wife and son, and the ex-wife and the son go before and then he goes right after them. But when he finds them, there seems to be a problem with them. He's not allowed to see his son, something like that. Like, this is a full-on reinterpretation of what happened last year, so it does specifically address all of the things. So if you're not ready for it, I'm just putting it out there for you guys, but in case you want to check it out, it's coming out next month. Like, they full on have people with masks, and children are kind of having these costumes that they used to wear during the plague back in the day. So it's like intense if you're not ready for this kind of stuff. Faithless by Hunter Shea, another adult horror, and this is about a priest that basically hears how his family is being murdered over the phone, and he doesn't know how to cope with anything, so he leaves everything behind and he goes to a remote isolated farm that he has from his aunt, I believe, and he just thinks that he's just going to drink himself away. So trigger warning here for possible alcoholism, I guess, because if that's his intention, that's what he might do in the book. And that is until he feels that there is something else, some kind of presence, something with him in the house. Flowers for the Sea is an adult horror fantasy that is being compared to Olivia E. Butler and to Rosemary's Baby. So those are really good things, so I'm excited about this book. It's supposed to be a gothic fantasy in which we learn probably greed and revenge. We follow a group of survivors that are in the middle of the sea in an ark, and of course they don't have probably much to eat and all of that. So I am kind of really intrigued to see the direction that this story is going to take. Beyond the Veil, edited by Mark Morris, is a compilation of short horror stories, and this is a total of 20 stories. This is the second volume, and apparently they are trying to do this annually, and it's not themed, so every story has a complete different theme, so it's not like a specifically themed horror compilation, but you have 20. Some of these stories have been commissioned from people like authors that you know, and others have been taken out of awards and things like that. So it's really interesting because you're gonna get a lot of different types of subgenres of horror. Body Shock's Extreme Tales of Body Horror, edited by Ellen Datlow, who we all know because she has edited so much science fiction and horror books by now. It's all compilations that she edits, and this one is only going to be for those that are not faint of heart, because this is body horror specifically, so it's going to be a lot more intense, a lot more gory, a lot more disgusting, and a lot more specific than other horror stories. So that's only for the people that actually enjoy body horror. For me, I do enjoy it. Hello, I love Candyman and other horror stories like that. However, you know, it kind of depends at times. At times it might be even a little bit too much for me, I guess, depends on the description. But I just cannot stop myself from enjoying those stories, so this is one that's definitely also going to my wish list. The Ghost Sequences by A.C. Wise, and this is a more relaxed short horror story compilation in which you're gonna get more stories about trauma and grief and kind of like your more regular horror, so nothing extreme here. So if you want to check it out, it's probably going to contain a lot of stories also regarding ghosts based on the title. So yeah, a lot of short horror story compilations coming out in October. It's going to be so hard to decide which ones to pick. Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, and this is adult horror combined with some fantasy, and this is about a creepy house based also on some Japanese mythology and culture, and with a lot of good twists and turns. There is a creepy old abandoned mansion, and underneath it there is a bride buried there with some women that were sacrificed to be buried with her for kind of, you know, like to have them in the afterlife. And there is a group now of friends in the present time that go to that haunted house looking for a thrill, and they have some drinks and all these fun and games until there's something lurking in the shadows. The Restoration by J.F. Moncrief is a paranormal horror story that is actually inspired on real life events, on an experience that the author had when he stayed on a supposedly haunted place. This is supposed to be a really thrilling mystery that has murders and family secrets that cannot stay buried. Terry is invited to spend the year restoring this beautiful mansion, and she thinks she's hit the jackpot, but when the restoration starts, there is a lot of dark things that are coming to light that happened in that house. October Nights by Kevin Luthia. It's a short horror story compilation, and these ones are specifically thought for Halloween night, so I'm expecting to have some of your classic horror Halloween themed kind of stories. They all have this specific vibe. There is some recurring themes in Halloween stories, so I'm hoping to see something fresh and new from this one. But if you're looking for specifically Halloween tales, this might be the one for you. Then we have Cunning Folk, a folk horror thriller by Adam Neville, where heaven cannot be home when hell is next door. Money is tight, and we have here a family that accepts to get a house that needs a lot of fixing. It seems it could be a potential money pit, but it is really cheap, so they can afford it because somebody apparently committed suicide in that same house. So the family moves there thinking to fix up the place and have a nice new home, but things start to go south when there is some trouble that happens. To start with the neighbors, that is an elderly couple. So I'm just really intrigued here because I don't know exactly where the mystery is coming, what kind of a folk tale this is supposed to be. So really intrigued, and normally Adam Neville never disappoints. The Unheard by Nikki French, and this is a mystery thriller. We follow Tess, and her priority has always been her 3-year-old daughter Poppy, and she's always tried to protect her. But one day she discovers that Poppy starts drawing really weird things that kind of led her to believe that Poppy has witnessed something really traumatic, and she will want to find out what it is, what she saw, what happened. Where They Wait by Scott Carson. It is an adult horror thriller, and we follow Nick. He's been fired from his job at a newspaper, and he decides to take on the job to work on profiling and doing things for an app. Doesn't sound like too interesting, but at least, you know, it's a job. And when he starts working in this app, he starts to have some recurring nightmares, and he's going to have to figure out who this woman is that starts appearing in his nightmares. Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente is a horror thriller novella. We follow here Sophie, and she and her husband seems to be perfect for each other, and everything is going really great, but he's always working, he's always in business trips, and when he comes back, he always has this weird kind of, you know, sad face, and she doesn't know what happens on those business trips. He never gives her any answers. So what is happening with her husband? The Secret Skin, Wendy N. Wagner, and this one is a classic horror gothic story. We have someone that returns to the family estate, the family house, and when they move back into that house, There is like doors that close by themselves. There's weird creepy noises. So this sounds exactly like your typical gothic tale. So if you love those type of stories, this might be perfect for you to check out this Halloween season. Bleed More, Body More by Ian Kirkpatrick, adult horror. We follow Joey. She's a mechanic and she gets a call from a friend to go pick up a car, and when she gets there, she doesn't just find a car, she also finds a dead body, and the police are apparently looking for her friend, assuming that her friend is the killer that they're looking for. But she's on a mission now to find her friend and prove that her friend is not guilty. Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is adult horror and sounds fantastic because we are in St. Vincent's orphanage for boys, and we have here a lot of different boys with different personalities that come from really different messed up backgrounds, and they're all learning there from the priests, and they are there worshiping with them. That is until some intruders come in. One of them is hurt, is bleeding, they have some weird occult symbols in them. So that's all I know, but it just sounds perfect. It sounds exactly my jam. All right, you guys, so these were the 32 books that I wanted to talk to you about that are coming out in the month of October. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found something that you want to pick up for the Halloween season. I know we all have endless TBR piles, but maybe there was something in the list that you said, I really need to get that one. Let me know down below if you're gonna pick up any of these, and also let me know if there's anything else coming out the month of October that I have not mentioned that you think I will love. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. As always, you guys, please give the video a big thumbs up for support. You know, it helps the visibility of the channel, and I hope to see you all, as always, in our next coffee time. Bye.